Welcome to the HiRSE Seminar Series on Research Software Engineering in Helmholtz and beyond.
Yes, thanks very much, Claire. So my name is Matthias, as Claire has introduced me. I don't speak here as an expert in research software engineering at all. My background is completely different. I represent the DFG. You probably all know the DFG funding agency, but also the organization representing the German research community. So in this capacity, it's mandated with setting standards with respect to the background conditions in which research takes place in Germany. And yeah, I'll tell you a little bit about the CoARA, the Coalition for the Reform of Research Assessment, and our stance on it. Let me share you some slides. If you have any questions, feel free to just ask them in the middle of my talk. I don't mind being interrupted at all, but you can also put them in the chat, but I don't see the chat. So somebody would then perhaps have to keep track of the questions that were asked.
Okay.
Good. So I'll start by giving you a bit of background about the international reform initiatives in the field of research assessment. Then I'll tell you a bit about what the DFG as a funding agency, but also as a standard setting agency has been doing in the field, particularly with respect to academic publishing. That's the second part of my talk. And then finally, I'll tell you a bit more about the Coalition for Advancing Research Assessment, CoARA, and what we as DFG have been doing in this respect and how we view the matter. And then if you have any questions or if you would like to discuss any points, I'm very happy to do that. So the background, you may have come across a number of initiatives in the field of research assessment. So for example, one of the most famous ones is already more than 10 years old, is the DORA, the San Francisco Declaration on Research Assessment. This was a declaration. It originated in a meeting of the American Society for Cell Biology. So this was sort of comes from the life sciences. It's a paper with 18 concrete proposals directed, as you can see here, to different groups about how research assessment can be made fairer and better suited to science. Then also a famous paper is the Leiden Manifesto for Research Metrics. This is a paper, you can also see it there. I'm also happy to share the slides, by the way, so you can click on the links. 10 proposals against the inappropriate uses of quantitative data in the assessment of research and researchers. And finally, the Hong Kong Principles for Assessing Researchers. This is from 2019. Now, these are all different papers and different declarations with different backgrounds and from different kinds of people, but they have a few things in common. Namely, they converge on two demands, main demands. The first one is this: for purposes of research assessment, especially of research proposals in our case, the DFG, and the assessment of individual achievements, for example, in tenure review or things like that, a qualitative approach should be prioritized over quantitative proxies like journal impact factors, HiRSE or H-index, university rankings, things like that. Or to give you a slogan, which is easier to remember, ideas count more than numbers in research assessment, or should count more than numbers. And the second main demand that is common to all these declarations, which I just mentioned, is if you assess research, then you should take into account a broader variety of practices and contributions to science than just journal articles. Journal articles are important and are the gold standard, especially or if at least if they are appropriately peer reviewed and quality controlled. But they are not the only thing that counts and should count. You are research software engineers, and you will probably be interested in making sure that well-documented code in research software can also appropriately count towards your achievements when you are assessed for tenure or whatever. And here the slogan is a diversity of research practices and types of contributions should count. So these are the two demands or the two ideas that are presented in these different declarations and initiatives. Ideas count more than numbers. And when you look at ideas or when you look at achievements, look at the whole breadth of types of contribution, also things besides journal articles. Now, the DFG has been, or the processes and the programs of DFG have more or less been in harmony with these demands before these demands were made. So we think that we have been pretty good with respect to research assessment even before that. But of course, the field is moving, and we have implemented some changes to be even better, to be even more aligned with what the research community thinks research assessment should be like. And I want to tell you just a little bit about one white paper which was published recently, 22 already, but and some concrete policy changes in the DFG in this field. So there's this paper, Academic Publishing as a Foundation and Area of Leverage for Research Assessment. If you want, have a look at it. The link is here. It's a relatively long and complex paper. And the core content is basically a diagnosis of some problems in the publication culture as we see it today. So firstly, publications are slow, and there is there is a time lag between the research, the conclusion of the research, and the publication of the quality controlled article. So there's a delay between there's a too long delay, and then the system is not perfect for getting the right information to the right audiences. So there's reduced public awareness among the larger public, but sometimes also among the academic public. The visibility is not perfect. You can't find the topics which you are interested in. And some topics which are not marketable, so to speak, in the current science sector may not really get through in the way they should. Furthermore, if only publications count in papers, in journals, then there is the problem of insufficient recognition for other kinds of scientific output, which may perhaps in the current system be less prestigious than articles in Science or Nature or Cell, things like that. So we can say that this all falls under impediments to the flow of knowledge. Then there's the second area of problems, the way the current publication system or culture works. There are incentives for cutting corners in the research process. You all know this. There is the publish or perish principle. So everybody wants to publish as many small papers as they can, or not everybody, but there's this incentive to do so. And this obviously comes with problematic incentives, even incentives for violations of good scientific practice. You all are aware of the many retractions of papers that we hear about all the time, or falsified data, or tweaked diagrams or graphics. This is all a problem that derives partly from problematic incentives in the publication culture. And then finally, the way the publication system works at the moment is very, very expensive, both for libraries or universities, which have to buy the publications, but also if you want to publish in open access, there are very high APCs to get your stuff published in open access journals. So the way things work, very expensive. And the DFG, recognizing these problems, has attempt or is trying to work on each of them in the way that as a funding agency it can. For example, we are very interested in helping the communities establish and support fast and open publication formats. The pandemic has had this among terrible consequences. One good consequence, namely, it has really pushed preprint servers and made them much more popular in the communities. Our aims has to include helping people access all kinds of topics and publish all kinds of topics, not just the ones which are currently marketable, so to speak, in the big journals. We want to help the scientific community to become or stay the owner of their own data, of their own publications, and of their own publication venues. And we want to try to make sure that output of all kinds is duly recognized, for example, in the assessment process. The second sort of area which where we see where we think that we need to get the community moving and where the DFG thinks it can perhaps help a little bit is to incentivize quality control in the entire cycle of research, not just peer review of the finished manuscript, and to do more to incentivize good research practice. And here you can, if you have some time or if you're interested in this topic after this talk, look at some papers and links which are available. For example, there's the Open Science Position paper. This is not just of the DFG, but of all the funders which come together in Science Europe, which is sort of the club of European big funding agencies. And then, of course, there's the DFG Code for Good Scientific Practice, gute wissenschaftliche Praxis. You can have a look at this. This website is actually much more interesting than you may think. It's not just the code. It contains also sort of a discussion space where you can enter examples of bad or good scientific practice so that the code is sort of filled with real life. Have a look at it if you have some time. And then finally, we think that, as I already said, we need to have new publication venues which are not commercial but owned by the scientific communities themselves. And we have sort of an action plan for this, for Diamond Open Access. The links are here, and if you want, I can tell you a little bit more about it in the Q&A session afterwards. So that's what we want, what we think needs to be done, and where the DFG thinks it can contribute. But one sort of important meta lesson behind all of this is the following. If we want the scientific system to change in the ways which I just indicated, we need the reform of research assessment. We need to make sure that when the achievements of individual researchers are assessed and when proposals for new projects are assessed, ideas should count more than metrics. because if only science and nature papers and citation rates and impact factors count, then this has as a consequence the strengthening of these problematic incentives. And we need to appreciate a wide variety of contributions from scientists. So this is sort of the relationship between what's wrong in the publication sector and the issue of assessment reform, about which I'm going to tell you a little bit more. In September 22, the DFG has introduced a whole package of measures to support the shift in the culture of research assessment. And just to give you two main parts of this, and I'll give you a list later of the other measures which were included in this package. We now have, for the first time actually in the DFG history, a uniform CV template, which gives you room for narrative information. So you don't just have to fill out the table, but you can enter some text. This is optional, but more and more researchers actually use this. And this can be used, for example, to describe particular times in your CV where you could not, for example, publish as much as you would have liked because you had children, you cared for parents, or things like that, which happen in normal life. But you can also enter particular kinds of achievement in the science, in your scientific career, which are not normally assessed, right? Different kinds of prizes. Perhaps you have served as a mentor to younger researchers. Perhaps you have won a prize for a particular kind of software which to which you have contributed, things like that. So there is now space to enter these kinds of things, which which sometimes fall through the cracks, so to speak. And yeah, that's the new uniform CV template. If you want to have a look, I'll also show you what it looks like in a moment. But we have also changed the guidelines which we issue to our reviewers. So these are guidelines in which we tell reviewers what we want them to look at and what we don't want them to look at. And we also have changed the guidelines to the applicant itself. So one main change is that in the CV and in the proposal, not in the CV, but in the proposal, in the past, applicants simply listed their previous publications. Now, what we would like them to do and what we would like reviewers to look at, the previous work that is relevant to a given research proposal that you submit to the DFG should be discussed. The content should be discussed. So what we want you to do is write a little bit about how a certain previous project has, for example, helped you develop a particular method to tackle a difficult question, how this method has perhaps developed in a further publication, and how it is now being used in your current project proposal. So we want you to guide the reviewer through your ideas, your previous ideas as they are published, and not just list the publications. And then we would ask the reviewers to see if this development of ideas and contents is plausible. It doesn't mean that we want reviewers to read all your papers, but it means that we would like them to discuss a little bit about how your previous work has led up to the current proposal now under review. And this, we think, is a way to strengthen this idea that contents count more than um, just figures or just the fact that you have publications out. If you want to have a look at the CV, I think I'll just show it to you quickly here. This is what it looks like. So you can now enter these supplementary career information bits. You can tell the reviewers and the review board and the decision-making boards of the DFG about your activities in the research system. You can also say, for example, if you have been supervising younger researchers, things like that. And with respect to this other demand that not just publications in respected journals count, but all kinds of contributions, we have now made sure that this kind of information can be entered. And the way we do this in the current template is we have a category A and a category B for previous work or scientific contributions. Category A is basically the category for the kinds of peer-reviewed articles, which normally fill publication lists in CV. Category B is all the, let me call it, non-classical kinds of contributions. So you can enter them there. And the important thing is that category B is, so to speak, fenced off. So you can enter a number of publications in category A, and category B will always be open for the other publications. Yeah, I will. I've already said that reviewers are asked to look at the contents rather than the figures. I have this in German only, but I can tell you a bit more about this. This also is a slide, unfortunately, is only in German. This gives you an overview of the changes we have implemented in 2022. So having said this, I can now talk about the CoARA because the basic idea is that declarations, like the ones that I've listed in my first slide, they're not enough. Recommendations to reviewers and applicants, they're also not enough. And the actions of individual organizations, even big funders like the DFG, are not enough either. What we need if we want to get the culture of research assessment, and this is a worldwide kind of thing, if we want that to change, we need coordinated action. We need people to understand that these issues are a matter of research assessment culture. And for that reason, or to address this thought, the CoARA was formed. CoARA, Coalition on Reforming Research Assessment, started as a white paper of the European Commission already in around 2020. And then was discussed by the member states of the European Union, but also by many research performing and research funding organizations throughout Europe, which were asked to contribute to the process, to the reform process. The DFG itself was also one of these organizations which were asked to contribute. It has done that in many different ways. So it was involved in drafting the actual agreement behind the CoARA, and it was then also involved in the preparation of the organization, which has now the name CoARA. So the agreement behind the CoARA, the agreement on reforming research assessment, has 10 commitments. 4 of them are the core commitments. And I show them to you here. 2 of them are more general and 2 of them are specific. But you can see that these mirror the key demands of the various initiatives which I just outlined in the very beginning. So the core commitment 1 is recognize the diversity of contributions to and careers in research in accordance with the needs and nature of the research. And secondly, base research assessment primarily on qualitative evaluation, for which peer review is central, supported by responsible use of quantitative indicators. So the CoARA makes clear it's not forbidden, it's not ruled out also to look at things like journal impact factors or citation rates. But if you do that, be careful to do it properly and appropriately, and make sure that, just as an example, you don't just compare citation rates between one subject or one discipline and another, where there might be completely different publication cultures. Same goes for H-index or university rankings. Yeah, the two more specific demands or commitments are abandon inappropriate uses in research assessment of journal and publication-based metrics. I just said this. And fourthly, avoid the use of rankings of research organizations in research assessment. There are some further commitments as well. We don't have to go through all of them, but these are made sure that the signatories of the agreement and the organizations which then become part of the CoARA actually work towards the intended cultural change. For us as the DFG, it's very important to say that the agreement is compatible with a number of very important theses about what we as DFG always say that research commitment, research assessment should be like. So research quality or excellence is and will always remain the main target of research assessment. I say this also because some organizations, particularly in the German science system, have voiced the worry that CoARA could lead to something like a dissolution of the commitment to quality or to excellence. And some have said, for example, that if we follow CoARA, then diversity of research teams in the end will count more than scientific excellence. This is not the case. The agreement itself makes this clear, but also the understanding of the member organizations, as it shows, for example, in the working groups, makes very clear that research excellence will remain the key point in all research assessment. That's important for us as the DFG. Secondly, diversity and inclusivity are important, but can be understood as conditions for research quality. So we don't look at these things like diversity or inclusivity as normatively significant just by themselves, but as drivers of excellence. Thirdly, the paper, the agreement, sometimes it does mention impact in a number of places. And this has also led some critics of the CoARA to worry that now all the members will be forced to base their assessment on societal impact or even economic impact or marketability. That's not the case. The DFG can and will continue to understand impact in an intrascientific way. So by impact, we mean does a research project, will it lead to the development of new theories or new approaches or new understandings within science? That's our focus, and the CoARA is completely consistent with it. And finally, open science is a term that also appears in the agreement and also in some of the working groups of the CoARA. And here it's important for us to say that the open and open science doesn't need to mean something like citizen involvement in projects. We understand the open and open science as transparency, replicability, accessibility, and in that sense, think that open science basically is just a way to make explicit some core commitments of science itself. Of course, it's good if we use digital tools to make sure that science is accessible. But the commitments stem from the idea of science that was part of science long before the digitalization. So you can have a look at the agreement online, read it for yourself. The link is here. And I will close shortly, but let me just say, there is not just the paper, the agreement on reforming research assessment, but the CoARA, unlike, for example, DORA, is an actual organization. An organization with all the kinds of structural features that organizations have, like a general assembly, like a steering board, like a chair, and all these things. Why is that the case? Well, the reason is that it was the idea was to have an organization which can help members to actually exchange or to talk about what the good practices or best practices are, to help each other become better in research assessment. It's also used for reporting. So each member of the CoARA is asked to submit and publish annual reports. We are just about to, as the DFG, to publish our first report very soon. The first one is called Action Plan. The next ones, I think, will be called reports. And also, the CoARA as an organization can be used. This hasn't happened yet, but it's certainly possible. And I would think that this is also interesting for the for the member organizations to jointly work on recommendations, which can then be published and issued to the wider world about how research assessment can be improved. Yeah, and that's why the CoARA, as I said, has a general assembly, has working groups, already 13 working groups, which have been initiated, which have started their work recently. It has a steering board of 11 members. One of them is a chair and some co-chairs, and it has some national chapters as well. We have just 3 weeks ago initiated the national chapter of CoARA for Germany. It also has a secretariat. There is some money involved in it. You can even, as a CoARA member, request funds for pilot projects in the reform of your own research assessment. Now CoARA has grown very large. It now has 610 members. Some additional organizations have simply signed the agreement on reforming research assessment without wanting to become full members. But most of the signatories are actual members. As you can see here, most of these organizations which have signed up for membership are universities or their associations. But all other kinds of organizations are involved. So research performing organizations, institutes, academies, learned societies, funders like the DFG and others. And then there are other organizations. One type of organization which is excluded from becoming a member is national ministries. Those are not currently eligible to become members. And you can see here that most interest in CoARA is in countries like Spain and Italy, Poland, which all have more than 50 members which have signed up for membership. This is probably for two reasons. Mainly, there are probably sort of national traditions of joining organizations like this, but also we think that the pressure for reform is felt to be larger, more urgent by the research communities in these countries. So their researchers probably feel that the problem of having to perform by numbers is more urgent than in other countries, where the reform perhaps may be less needed, so to speak. Um, in Germany, we have a number of members. I show them to you here, but we don't have to list them all. For now, let me pause here and again tell you that if you have any questions or if you want to discuss any points, I'm very happy um, to remain on this call for a bit. Thank you.
Thank you for watching our seminar. Please check out the slides on Zenodo linked below and see you next time.